690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Emma Webb along with Dr René Hodekamp, Ben Leo, Claire Pearsall and Benjamin Butterworth. Tonight on the show, Dr René.
Keir Starmer has squandered an opportunity to stop the riots.
And Claire?
The Labour Party has been less than truthful about its taxes.
Benjamin?
And why I'm thrilled boomers won't be collecting their winter fuel handouts.
And I will be talking about whether or not two-tier policing is to blame for all of the disorder. It's 6 p.m. and this is Saturday 5. Welcome back to Saturday 5. I'm in the hot seat tonight because Darren Grimes is away sunning himself, and you may have noticed the empty chair there, which will be explained in due course. Darren is always calling for the government to keep undesirables out of the country, so this could be the last that we see of him. You may notice, as I say, that we are the Saturday 4 this evening because Ben Leo will be joining us ASAP. He is currently hot-footing it back from Aberdeen, where he's been doing a very exciting interview with no less than Eric Trump, and we will have some great clips of that interview later in the show. Thank goodness there is one man that we can count on to be Mr. Reliable. Benjamin Butterworth is returning to his rightful role as the darling of GB News viewers.
They keep asking me to leave, but I still turn up.
Also with me is the wonderful GP and author René Hodekamp, and making her debut on the show, the brilliant political commentator Claire Pearsall. Now, you all know the drill. Each host outlines their argument about their chosen topic, and then we all pile in and the fur starts to fly. And of course, we want to know your views as well, so do send in your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. And don't forget to get your questions in for Ask the Five. No topics are off limits. But before we start tearing each other apart, it's your news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Emma, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories. Protests have been taking place in several parts of the country today. Ministers met this afternoon to discuss the potential for further widespread disorder. And in that meeting with senior MPs, the Prime Minister said the right to freedom of expression and the violent disorder we've seen are two very different things. He also said there's no excuse for violence of any kind. The Deputy Prime Minister said they're working with local authorities to ensure members of the community who've been targeted by thuggish extremists have the support they need. Merseyside Police have said a number of officers have been injured during serious disorder in Liverpool city centre. In Hull, around 100 people gathered outside a migrant hotel, being guarded by police, where a window was also smashed. At least 3 people were led away in handcuffs as demonstrators faced counter-protesters in Nottingham. Meanwhile, police in riot gear were deployed in Belfast amid tense exchanges between protesters and an anti-racism rally with a small number of fireworks also being thrown. Northumberland police have accused protesters of unforgivable violence and disorder following rioting in Sunderland city centre last night. Videos posted on social media showed a former police office ablaze, while a mosque was also targeted. Vehicles were overturned and set on fire as rioters clashed with officers throwing rocks and bottles. 5 police officers were injured, with 4 hospitalised and 10 people arrested for offences including violent disorder and burglary. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says police have the government's full backing to take the action they need against violent protesters.
Well, criminal violence and disorder has no place on Britain's streets. We've been clear to the police that they have our full backing in taking the strongest possible action against perpetrators, including we're making sure that there are more prosecutors, there are sufficient prison places, and also that the courts stand ready, because anyone who engages in this kind of disorder needs to be clear that they will pay the price.
The UK's most senior police and crime commissioner is urging the government to explain how it will solve mass uncontrolled immigration following rioting and civil unrest. Donna Jones is calling for Sir Keir Starmer to address protesters' concerns as the country faces more than 30 demonstrations this weekend alone. She said the announcement of the Prime Minister's new violent crime units has led to an accusation of two-tier policing and inflamed protesters. The 17-year-old accused of murdering 3 girls in Southport once starred as Doctor Who in a BBC Children in Need advert. Then 11-year-old Axel Rudakabana can be seen leaving the TARDIS in 2018 and telling viewers how best to raise money. It's understood the teenager was found for the video through a casting agency. A spokesman for BBC Children in Need said they had removed the video out of respect for those impacted by the shocking case. In other news, 2 men have appeared in court charged in connection with an alleged arson attack on Ukrainian-linked businesses in London. 22-year-old Jakeem Barrington Rose of Croydon and 19-year-old Ugnias Asmina of Wandsworth have both been charged with aggravated arson following a counter-terrorism investigation. Rose was also charged with possession of an offensive weapon. The Metropolitan Police believe the offences were carried out on behalf of Russia's Wagner Group. Donald Trump has agreed to debate Vice President Kamala Harris. He accepted an offer from Fox News for a televised face-off on the 4th of September. It's not yet known if the presumptive Democratic nominee will agree to take part, although she has previously indicated she is ready. Trump says the debate will feature a full arena audience. Well, Kamala Harris has responded today in a statement accusing the former president of running scared and suggesting he should stick to the debate he, quote, already committed to on the 10th of September.
He agreed to do 2 debates with President Biden, but unfortunately, President Biden didn't have the ability to go the full length of the distance. And Donald Trump feels a little bit cheated that he spent all of this money in campaigning against somebody who is obviously a zombie candidate. In addition to that, he's got a current litigation with George Stephanopoulos and ABC. And so he no longer feels that, since the terms have changed, that he should have to do the debate there. And it looks like, as of this morning, per his own messages on Truth Social, that there will be a debate. It will be in Pennsylvania, and it will be 2 days before early voting starts.
And Great Britain's Jake Jarman took bronze in the men's floor final to win the nation's first artistic gymnastics medal of the Paris Olympic Games. He was just 0.033 points behind the silver medalist and defending champion. 22-year-old Jarvis went into the final with the highest score in qualifying and also topped the floor standings during the men's all-around final. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Emma Webb and I can promise that you are in for a very lively show. So let's crack on with the first debate of tonight, and as this may be my only chance to call the shots on this show, so I am going to lead us off. Now, week after week after week, masses of people marched through the streets chanting anti-Semitic slogans. People begged the police to do something, even when a giant banner was held up branded with the name of a known Islamist group. Even then, when people chanted for jihad, we were told, nah, it's just meant in a spiritual sense. The same with Black Lives Matter. The message was clear: destroy what you want. If you've got large enough numbers, the police won't lift a finger. And then we end up with Leeds, where we saw the police fleeing the scene, leaving locals with chaos, disorder and a bus in flames. Again, the message was clear: if you want something and you want to be heard, you go on a rampage. But as we have seen this week, the police do still know how to police. They can use their powers when they want to. So people legitimately ask, why did they cower in the corner at the other disorderly protests? Why the strong words all of a sudden from that pompous Westminster princeling two-tier Keir? So, guys, Benjamin, we never agree with each other. Do you think the two-tier policing is part of the problem here?
Well, look, when the Black Lives Matter riots happened, alongside the legitimate protests, both Suella Braverman as Home Secretary and Yvette Cooper as the opposition said that the riotous elements of that was unacceptable. I don't think there was a two-tier. But where I think the hypocrisy comes in is that last week you had all these people, all these right-wingers lining up to say, just stop oil, and their peaceful protest, though I do think it was illegal, but it was peaceful, should get their 5 years in prison for what they've done. We should condemn them. They are appalling. They are a threat to the democracy. They are mob rule. And days later, as angry white men start throwing bricks at a mosque and start attacking police officers, they say, but it's a legitimate concern. I think the two-tier is in the hypocrisy of those right-wingers who have one rule for Just Stop Oil and another for angry racists.
But I would say that the difference there, surely, Renee, is the fact that the people on the right have been saying, while there might be legitimate reasons to be angry about this, everybody has been very clear in caveating that by saying, but it's not legitimate to then go and criminal damage, burning down police stations. It's possible to say that someone's grievance is legitimate because, of course, it's naturally you'll get angry if children are being butchered in cold blood. But people are not actually justifying the action. I think that's the difference from Just Stop Oil.
I think that is the difference. And also, two things can be true at the same time. You know, people can see that there's a problem and people are unhappy, but not agree with burning police cars because that's going to make the problem worse. We need more police cars. But in terms of your Just Stop Oil comparison, that's like saying that because Just Stop Oil got 5 years, someone else should get 10 years. Maybe the Just Stop Oil was right and everybody else needs even harsher sentences. I don't think you can use a but whataboutery Just Stop Oil to compare. I don't think it's an equal comparison because A, these people have not gone to court yet, so don't have a sentence. They might get 50 years. I doubt it, but they might. Just Stop Oil went to court, they were found guilty, they were punished. Nothing to do with this, Benjamin, nothing.
But the reaction is extraordinarily telling in that when these men, many of whom I do not believe have great informed concerns about immigration, I think they are just angry, drunk men that like fighting. These are the kind of people that get off their faces at a football match and go home and beat their wives. These are bad people and their politics don't matter.
But Benjamin, you're a journalist, so normally you would say probably you would have a reason for believing certain things. If it were an Islamist protest, for example, would you run to the same assumptions?
Well, I've been outspoken the whole time about how Jewish people in this country have been made to be fearful about going into central London, about going about their normal lives. If people had been...
So you would agree, though, that those protests weren't properly policed and should have been properly policed?
Yeah, I think you saw the example of Gideon something or other, the Jewish leader, who tried to cross the road in central London with his kippah on, I think, after being at synagogue, and was blocked because it was seen as a political statement that could be provocative. That was wrong. But can I just point out that there has been far more acceptance of people throwing bricks and damaging a mosque than if that had happened at a synagogue? Why is it that some people sympathise with that and say, oh, but they must have legitimate concerns? That's really dangerous.
Let Claire get a word in, because that's not true, is it? Because it's been roundly condemned. There's been talk of, you know, the Prime Minister did a press conference about cracking down on it.
I don't think the Prime Minister's got about it in the right way, because all he's done is inflame tension within other religions by saying, well, hold up a second, what about the situation with synagogues? Why should Muslims and mosques be singled out? I think the problem comes when you have people turning up for a protest in a town that they have no connection with, simply looking for a fight. And we have seen that. They don't entirely know what they're doing, and it's little wonder that the police are going to crack down on it when they have seen the behaviour of marches either earlier in the day or the day before with similar groups of people. So I can understand from the police's point of view they're going to come down hard on it. I think Just Stop Oil, as much as I dislike the organisation, I'm very, very pleased they had long prison sentences. It is not comparable to this. It really isn't. I don't think you can conflate those two issues.
But also, we've seen other things this week. We've seen people that work here, Martin Daubney, be put in handcuffs for doing his job, whereas... Yeah, he was put in handcuffs at one of the protests this week for being there to report on it. But at the same time, when he was at a Palestine march, pointing out to them where they were projecting onto the Houses of Parliament, they wouldn't take any notice of him or arrest those people. But a 73-year-old woman.
Doesn't Benjamin's argument actually prove the point that actually because those protests weren't policed properly, that's the reason why people think, well, I can go out and I can riot and there won't be consequences. Now maybe there will be consequences, but the point is that those previous protests... I mean, Just Stop Oil is actually a good example, Extinction Rebellion, and they did all sorts of criminal damage and got away with that.
But I think also that we don't know the entirety of the policing operation, and neither should we. We see pieces on social media, or if people have managed to be down at a part of a protest, but we don't see all of it. We don't know how many people have been arrested at each event for whatever reason. So
well,
I think that we have to... Well, no, I do think you have to be a little bit careful by saying that you can't have one protest and you can have another one, because we don't know the policing and the intelligence behind it.
I have to interrupt because we have some breaking news. Ben Leo is here with us in the studio. Here he comes, having hot-footed it all the way from Aberdeen.
Oi, man. How's it going, Weavers?
He's doing an impersonation of Darren Grimes, it seems. He's picked up Darren Grimes' accent whilst being in Scotland.
Me. Who's going to get me a cup of tea, then? What a morning.
Did you pick up that accent when you were on your way through Durham on the way back on the train?
That's a Geordie accent, isn't it? Not Scottish. Yeah, what a day. Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son, the Vice President of Trump International. I'm sinking in my seat. Amazing. Unfortunately, I've had a bit of a hectic week when it comes to planes. Apparently, planes in this country now are akin to Southern Rail trains, where they're just cancelled willy-nilly. So up at 4 a.m, went to fly to Aberdeen to go and meet Eric Trump. Flight was cancelled, so we had to fly to Inverness, get a 2-hour taxi to Inverness.
You must be knackered.
I'm very tired. It's been a gruelling couple of weeks.
You sleep on the floor of the airport?
Not again, no, not again.
They gave you a food voucher or something, didn't they?
Well, yeah, that was in the week when I came back from Dundee. They gave us a £6 food voucher for shops that weren't even open. But yeah, Eric Trump, really great guy, lots of energy. Reckons his dad, of course, is going to win, and he was gracious enough to speak to us despite being quite late. So, yeah, very hospitable guy. And also the course up there, Trump International at Aberdeen, beautiful course, making another course, they're building another course just to the side of it. An interesting comment, Eric Trump said, I wish the UK and the government would give us some more thanks for the Trump family and their investment in Britain.
Yeah, we'll get a load more on that later from you, Ben. So now it's Renee's turn.
OK, so I think this week Keir Starmer squandered an opportunity to actually bring people together in this country and maybe avoid some of the trouble that we've seen over the last few days and possibly will see this weekend. Instead, he chose to deliver his speech in Downing Street from a lectern, looking very prime ministerial, and instead of bringing himself together, he gave what I consider to be the most divisive speech that a politician, let alone a PM, has ever given in this country. We are in trouble, there is no doubt. And in times of trouble, all members of society should be able to look to their leaders to offer support, to offer guidance, and to bring people together with a rallying cry of we can do this together. But in a few short sentences, Keir managed to alienate a whole section of society. In labelling the Troubles as far right, Keir decided that the working man was to be isolated and separated from society and deplored, because that working man is the oil of society. The plumbers, the electricians, the shop workers, me as a doctor, because we are concerned about the effect of mass immigration on our culture from countries who have nothing in common with us over a very short period of time. The Mandarins of Westminster don't like the working man. In fact, they despise them and they look down on them, and they've decided that they're not worth listening to as before. Anything they say has no value. What Keir could have done this week is said, look, guys, we know there's trouble. We know you're unhappy. We are listening. We just got in power. Please give us a chance. We'll do a roadshow. We'll come and talk to you and we'll put this right together. Just give us time, because violence is not the way. Instead, he said, you're not important.
What kind of roadshow do you want? Antiques roadshow?
I don't care. I want the Prime Minister to talk to us, and I think him to listen.
I have to say, I was pretty angry watching him lay those flowers like it was Remembrance Day, so ceremonial, not very humane, actually. He could have engaged with those people who were heckling. Instead, he acted like they were just this, you know, inconvenient rabble. I didn't want to sort of engage with them at all. It made me feel furious.
Yeah, but I think that's, unfortunately, with Keir Starmer, you've got that kind of almost robotic personality. It doesn't come naturally to him to intervene with a crowd. If someone like David Cameron or Tony Blair, Boris Johnson would have managed to carry that off, but not everybody can. Theresa May was a prime example of somebody that was uncomfortable in that situation. So I think that's his personality. He isn't quite that good at it. But this is what we've got. He needed to go up there. He would have been criticised if he didn't lay flowers. Unfortunately, the way he did it looked as if, you're right, he was at the cenotaph or somewhere like that. He needed to cut something in between.
But do you think there's no sort of... I mean, Benjamin, you probably would disagree with those who've been saying that he's not distinguishing enough between the far right and those people who have legitimate concerns, fears, are legitimately angry about what's happened, and that in some ways that the term, you know, far right is just other groups wouldn't be tarred with one brush in the same way. Yeah, it actually happened with the Islamist protests. People said, oh, but it's only a small number of people, it's not all of them. They're just sort of concerned about what's happening in Palestine.
I think there's something seriously wrong in the head with a person who heckles the Prime Minister remembering 3 murdered girls. Someone who thinks that is the time to make their protest, when at the point we didn't even have the full facts of the case, is the person acting in the wrong, and they should not be held up as somebody that you should meet in the middle. Those people have an issue. And let me say as well that there are lots of legitimate concerns and questions about integration and immigration and all those things. We just had a general election. They were discussed lots. Nigel Farage often gets them on the front pages. It's not like the country doesn't ask these questions. But these were people going out and rioting and being thugs, saying it was Islamism and immigration, when the person accused is a British Christian, not a Muslim and not an immigrant. That is the person accused.
I don't think we know his religion, but...
It's been widely reported that he's a Christian.
But Benjamin, the concern more, as far as I'm concerned, isn't just the immigration, asylum seekers and religion. I think it's the breakdown of law and order. I think that's the concern. People are feeling...
But people like you celebrate this breakdown of law and order. That is the truth of it. We have had a week. We have had a week of people from the hard right, racist and anti-immigration people, celebrating what is going on the streets because they think it legitimises their bigotry.
That's pretty out of order for you to say that. You need to retract that.
No, I won't.
I don't celebrate violence on the streets. I condemn all violence.
Well, we'll condemn the people that have been violent this week. Condemn everyone and call them the far right, just like Keir Starmer did.
Any skin colour, any religion, violence on our streets solves nothing. I condemn it all. I condemn all of it. So please retract that. I'm not having that.
Well, I'm glad you've retracted it. I think there's a lot of people...
Are you going to retract it?
On your part, but not on other people's part, because there has been a delight, a glee among some people at the riots of this week, because they think it legitimises their conclusions, and their conclusions are not. They talk about the working class in such a patronising way, as though they're all sort of tattooed Nazis. That's offensive.
We're going to have to move on to our next break, but I think it's important to just say that if you've made that accusation against Ben and it's incorrect, then maybe your accusation...
You can go and make me a cup of tea now, Ben, for that.
Yeah. Right. And also important, very, very briefly to mention, that one of the people who was there when Keir Starmer laid those flowers, who was very upset by it, was somebody who said that they knew one of the nine-year-old who was murdered. So it is absolutely not right to tar everyone with the same brush. But anyway...
Sorry, Emma, just as a very quick plug for the Trump interview, I asked Eric Trump about his thoughts on Sir Keir Starmer, David Lammy, the comments that Lammy previously made about Donald Trump. So all that's coming up. We've got a few clips later on in this show and the full lot in Mark Dolan's show.
Right, we're going to have to go to a break now, I'm afraid, but we'll be back with you in a moment on the Saturday 5.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle is threatening to support Kamala Harris, and I reckon that would be the kiss of death for her bid as a president.
Well, look, Meghan has a relationship, a friendly relationship with Kamala Harris. I firmly believe that Meghan Markle will endorse Kamala Harris for president. This story is circulating because Newsweek actually took a poll asking how many people would be influenced by a potential endorsement from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. 40% said they would be influenced. 21% said they would vote for someone Harry and Meghan has suggested. And then 20 said that they would not vote for who Harry and Meghan suggested. I think that Meghan wants to be involved. Meghan wants to be included. This is potentially a very historic election. We really saw Meghan involved, including with Kamala Harris, some voter campaigns in 2020. And I think this is a great way for Meghan Markle to get her foot in the door. Her father, Thomas Markle, has said that she's always had political aspirations. And what better way than to be somehow involved, inserting your name in the headline with a presidential campaign like this?
Do you get the vibes, you get the sense that she is a political animal?
I don't feel like she has tough enough skin, but I do believe that this is important to her. During that speech for the UN, she talked about writing First Lady Hillary Clinton. We saw her in 2020 work with Stacey Abrams, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, and Michelle Obama to do campaigns for women voting, getting women to the polls.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday 5. As always, thank you for all of your emails and messages about tonight's topics. N. Dunn says there is a complete breakdown of law and order, and Labour have opposed any attempt to crack down on it in opposition. And now they're having to pay a harsh price for their woke policies. But Jack says, oh my God, I must have a terrible, terrible high temperature. I'm agreeing with Benji.
Me or Butterworth?
I presume Benji. Now it's time for our next debate. And up next is our debutant, Claire Pearsall. To have her say now. Claire.
Well, I really wish I could be a debutante. I think I could rock that outfit. But unfortunately, I think that the nation has sleepwalked into a time of higher taxes. What we saw on the election trail most recently was Labour saying the Conservative Party are awful, they have ruined the economy, and we're going to do a much better job. But, and this is a very big but, there is no money left, according to Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. And how are they going to change that? Well, not by raising income tax, not by dealing with the debt situation. I should imagine what they will do is go after things like inheritance tax, capital gains tax, council tax, fuel tax, all of the things that they have refused to rule out a rise in. And as we've seen recently, they cannot be taken at their word. They wanted to be the saviour of pensioners, but they're taking away the winter fuel allowance. Can you imagine the outrage if that was a Conservative government who had done that? The front pages of every newspaper would be evil Tories freeze granny. But no, it seems the Labour Party at the moment can do no wrong. Could this be that everybody is on holiday, they're not paying attention, but unfortunately, winter will soon come, the bills will pile high, and somebody is going to have to pay.
Benjamin, you hate pensioners. What do you think of that?
Well, I think we'll get on to pensioners later, but, you know, I think the fact is there is a massive black hole in the finances. And to claim that Labour has somehow made this up, as Jeremy Hunt seeked to imply earlier this week, is just wrong, because I remember listening in, I think, the second week of the general election campaign to Kevin Hollinrake, who was a Tory minister, say and acknowledge on LBC that there was a £19 billion black hole, which was the official figures put out some months ago, and he said, oh, they might cut justice and they might cut prisons if the Tories had got in. Okay. Now, that seemed like quite the mistake to do during the election campaign to let on, but the idea that this wouldn't apply regardless of party is nonsense. But the question is, why is there a £19 billion black hole? It's because Tories, like you, let that happen. You just kept spending. Boris Johnson didn't see. He never went into a shop he didn't want to buy. He just spent like there was no tomorrow, and we're living with the consequences.
So, Benjamin, so that Tory knew there was a black hole. Yeah. Why didn't the Shadow Chancellor?
But they do. They do. And this is what the most disingenuous part of all of this is Rachel Reeves saying, we didn't know about it, we had to wait until we saw the books. When she had access to the top officials at the Treasury from January, she has been accessing the same set of figures that are in the public
and may I add,
as everyone else.
3 weeks before the election, Rachel Reeves gave an interview to the Financial Times and she said, verbatim, we cannot just turn up on day one at the Treasury and say that there's a big mess and a big deficit we didn't know about because, I quote, we've got the OBR now. We don't need an election to know that.
So isn't that is like plainly misleading, right? If they've seen it and now they're making out that they haven't, that's misleading the public.
Well, now they're playing mind games, aren't they? Because the whole reason that she's saying this is so that come the autumn budget, she'll be able to say, oh, look, do you remember I told you that we didn't know about this, so now I have to do this. It's just games, and it's aimed at people like us to actually fill their pockets. Look, this week she has given £10 billion to public sector pay rises. That has to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from the people in the middle.
Even in the debates, the election debates, Keir Starmer at one point, when he was talking about his comments on Jeremy Corbyn's manifesto, effectively admitted that he'd say anything in order to get elected. He said something like, well, I said that because I wanted to get elected. Yeah. So is this not just a case of them saying, oh, well, we promise we won't put up taxes, knowing that probably they will have to?
But it comes as a surprise to absolutely no one. If their slogan is change, well, they're not really changing from the old politics of the Corbyn era. So I don't think they can hold any moral high ground.
And also, surely they're going to have to spend anyway, because they've already agreed to this massive pay rise for junior doctors, and the junior doctors want more, and there's going to be a gold rush from all the other public sector workers who also want pay rises. They're going to have to spend money on that too, because the unions have got a gun against their head.
It's GPs, it's going to be radiologists, it's going to be paramedics, it's going to be every man and his dog working in the public sector saying, oh, look, Labour have opened the floodgates. They've got a 20% pay rise. Where's my pay rise? It's going to be absolute chaos. Well, and do you know who they're going to target for that? People who pay capital gains tax primarily, people who aspire, who take risks to invest in assets, stocks, commodities, shares, and they're going to come along and akin to going into a bookmaker's on the corner of a high street and swiping the winnings from a punter betting on horse racing. They'll say, thank you very much, I'll have some of that. They didn't deserve it. They didn't deserve a penny of it.
The two things that trashed investment in our economy were Brexit and Liz Truss's budget, which undermined Britain so badly. And look, and the GP strike, I'd be interested to know what Renee thinks of it, Dr. Renee, I should say. That was opened in June under the last government and was finished by the time that the percentage, the 20% pay rise came out for junior doctors. I mean, the poll of GPs on whether they wanted to go on strike was finished. So it's not a consequence of the pay rise for junior doctors. It happened before that came out. Look, the pay rise for junior doctors costs about £1 billion. The strikes have cost about £1.7 billion. I'm glad that there is a government that's actually sorting stuff out, because I think people at home will think, I just want to see a doctor, I've paid my taxes, I want to get the healthcare I need to get back to work, to get on with my life.
They're not going to, are they? Because the GPs are going on strike.
And now, whether or not they voted before that, firstly it was the BMA, 8,000 doctors, there were 64,000 GPs in the country, so a very small minority have voted.
Well, are you saying that not voting is a legitimate reason for the result?
Very quickly, we're going to have to go to break.
But the GPs will now negotiate much harder because they've seen what's in the cupboard when it gets opened by Labour.
So will you turn down a pay rise? Will you turn down a pay rise in the interests of the nation?
We can get back into it maybe at another point.
Asked for one.
Still to come tonight. Okay, they're so unruly, I can't control them. We will be warming up for Ben Leo's big interview with Eric Trump by discussing the presidential race. But next, protests continue about plans to cut winter fuel payments. Well-known defender of the aged, Benjamin Butterworth, will tell us what he thinks about this. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It turns increasingly unsettled over the next 24 hours or so, particularly across the northwest of the UK. And that's down to an area of low pressure just sat to the northwest, bringing outbreaks of rain, stronger winds. The rain turning increasingly heavy by Monday across western Scotland. The Met Office warning out there could be some local disruption. A fairly quiet end to Saturday and into the early hours of Sunday, though cloud does thicken across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland later, with some patchy outbreaks of rain here, but for most it will be dry. Temperatures are largely staying in double figures, but a bit more comfortable for sleeping compared to recent nights. So Sunday morning, cloudy picture across western Scotland first thing, outbreaks of rain here, but brighter towards the northeast, the Northern Isles as well, seeing plenty of morning sunshine. The cloud extends across parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, with outbreaks of rain. They're largely light in nature. Drier further south and east across the rest of England and Wales, just perhaps one or two light showers, some hazy sunshine in places too. And as we head through the day on Sunday, we'll see further areas of cloud and rain pushing northeastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, perhaps northern England too. Much of the rest of England and Wales largely staying dry, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around, perhaps one or two showers. Best of the sunshine across southern and southeastern areas, temperatures here reaching around 23 or 24. Cooler further north and west you go, 16 or 17. With breezy conditions across western Scotland. On Monday, we can see heavy rain across Northern Ireland, Scotland, some local disruption possible due to that heavy rain through the day, with the Met Office warning out until around 9 p.m. Drier further south and east, temperatures are reaching around 26 or 27, so feeling a little warmer, then cooler and more unsettled later in the week.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
back to Saturday 5, as always. Thanks for all of your emails about tonight's topics. Edward says, Starmer couldn't have been more wooden and given off more signals that he couldn't wait to bolt from Southport. Always remember that he was a prosecutor. He cannot see the other side in any argument. Too right. Rebecca says Benjamin should have been told by the producer either to withdraw his unwarranted allegation against Ben Leo or immediately leave the studio.
Yeah. And he's still not made me a cup of tea.
You owe Ben an apology and a cup of tea.
I'll owe him a cup of tea. We'll do that.
And Rebecca says, producer, you are sacked. But now it's time for the next debate. So let's hear from Benjamin Butterworth.
All right, you're probably all going to hate me, but this week we've had lots of problems in this country with the benefit bill. It costs an absolute bomb. Can we afford it? But in good news this week, they decided that people that still have the curtains closed at mid-morning, have flat-screen TVs in their front room and don't go to work are to lose a massive benefit that they get. Yes, that's right. The pensioners aren't going to get their winter fuel allowance unless they're in one of the pension credit poverty categories. And thank God for that. And I'm sorry, I know we have lots of older viewers that will be angry at me right now, but I think it is a perversion of the state that we take money from young workers barely able to afford to rent, let alone get the security of a home, and we take that money and we give it to people with £1 million houses in London and comfortable assets. I think that is morally wrong, and the fact is that calling pensioners having that word be synonymous with poverty has to end. 27% of pensioners are worth £1 million or more. So well done, Rachel Reeves. I'm glad that you're ending the handout for the richest in society.
I think Benjamin knows some different pensioners to me. What do you think, Renee?
So, you know, you're quite happy going to the old Labour method of robbing from the elderly to make the young happy, because that's what we've just done. And there are 10 million pensioners who will lose this. 2 million of them are only just above the pension line.
Why don't you just call them the bourgeoisie and cut straight to it?
The bourgeois boomers, I agree.
Pensioners die of the cold. They die when they can't heat their homes. 2 million of them may not be able to do that this winter, but that's fine with you, because then you can have their houses.
Well, actually, I do think that it'd be very helpful for pensioners that have large houses that they don't need for downsize, because we have a housing crisis and it's a fundamental problem.
Young people always buy big houses, don't they? That's what they're dying for. Big houses.
Families, people trying to start a family and don't have the space and can't afford a house of the appropriate size. But the fact is that the idea that all pensioners are in poverty is just nonsense. 20 or 30 years ago, it was far more common. It is a success of our governments over the last 20, 30 years that there are no longer anything like the number of pensioners in poverty. But the fact is, the poorest age group in this country is under 30s. Tell me, why should someone on 20k living in Newcastle, struggling to rent an apartment, be paying taxes for someone in £1 million home in London to heat their house?
Because when they're a pensioner, the other 20-year-olds will pay...
No. Tell me, why should they be funding Richard Branson's heating?
Also, can we just point out that for those pensioners, being at the end of your life, being worth over £1 million when you consider house prices, is actually not that much if you consider that a lot of those pensioners will have their money in assets. That's not cash that they have.
We can't live like this.
And
we can't live...
substandard accommodation in their old age when they've worked hard to have the house that they live in, which may in fact be their family home, maybe their family...
And there you go. They had the chance to work hard and get a nice house, to have the comfort to raise a family, to have that security. And there is a generation of people, anyone under 40 in this country that's on a normal salary will struggle to get that opportunity. They won't buy a house, they won't have the money to start a family. And I'm sorry, but we have to rebalance this. We need to stop taking from the poor and giving to the rich. Just because they're rich and 70 doesn't mean they're not rich.
Let's let Claire get a word in.
I was going to say, if we just dial that down a minute, because do you know how much it costs to be able to onboard everybody onto the correct benefits? Because there are an awful lot of pensioners who are not claiming pension credit for many different reasons. Some of them are too proud, some of them don't know how to access the forms, they don't understand if they can claim. It is incredibly difficult, and I have sat with people going through endless pieces of paperwork to work out if they're entitled to do so. It costs so much money. It was looked at, I think back in 2014, this first came about, and the government was told it would cost you double what the scheme is actually paying out in winter fuel allowance if you're going to start means testing benefits. So it is a false economy for a beginning. And then to go on to your point about selling properties, well, OK, because that's great, because Labour are now going to remove the cap on what can be spent on care. So that we were going to put in the social care cap, which meant that everybody would pay a certain amount in from their own estate. Labour are now going to remove that. So you're going to have people plunging themselves into debt if they have a long-term condition such as dementia or such as Alzheimer's and needs very specialised care. So all they're doing, Labour are just taking away now from the pensioners because it is politically prudent for them to do so because they are more likely to vote Conservative.
And also, if they get dementia at the end of their life, like my grandma, if we didn't have her house in order to be able to fund that care, if she had liquidated those assets or whatever in order to be able to have more cash to spend, then that money wouldn't have been there to take care of her in her old age. I think it's just a ridiculous suggestion that we should just steal people's property or force them to
it's not
give
stealing.
up their property.
It's like, I'm sorry, Emma, call me a Conservative, but I think people should stand on their own 2 feet.
I'm definitely not calling you that.
I think people should be responsible for themselves. I don't think that people with £1 million houses should be relying on the state to heat them.
Benjamin wants the elderly to stand on their own feet.
Benjamin wants people.
Why should a cleaner be paying Mick Jagger's winter fuel allowance?
Benjamin is the sort
it's
of
obscene.
Benjamin is the sort of person who wants the elderly to stand up on the train and give him a seat.
You want people to stand on their own 2 feet whilst also saying pensioners should give way for the younger generation. Pensioners have spent decades grafting, building this country, grafting for their kids, buying houses.
And they're cutting off chances to another generation. It is economic craziness. It is arson on an unbelievable scale that we have cut off a generation of people getting the same opportunity that they had. There is nothing to be proud of by pulling the ladder up behind you.
We're going to have to leave it there for now. But still to come tonight, Ben Leo will be telling us about his fantastic interview with Donald Trump's son Eric. Clips coming up right here, and then a full interview from 9 p.m. And we are going to warm up for that by discussing the presidential race. Has Kamala Harris launched a perfectly timed run for the White House? You're watching the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
One local cricket team was made up entirely of one family, the Jollens.
The Newmarket midweek seconds played Thurlow and Old Millgreenian seconds, captained by, here we go, James Jolland. He played alongside family members Henry, Freddie, George, Jack, Archie, Ryan, Brandon and Daniel. Even if slightly controversial, one of the umpires was a Jolland to Stephen the umpire.
Yes, well, the Jolland family mostly live in Wickenbrook in Suffolk and have played for 4 years for Dullingham Village team before it merged with Newmarket. So that's the entire backstory. We're delighted to be joined now by Captain James Jolland and teammate and brother Nick Jolland. Really good to see you both this morning. This is incredible. How did you get the entire family involved in cricket?
Well, we started the club about 3 years ago, and it was more friends and family. But then it had this opportunity of this week to get everyone involved, because everyone was back and they all play cricket, various levels, and the youngest being 12, George, and we're all available. So we thought 1 week we'd do the whole team.
You booted the friends out for 1 week only?
Yeah, they were very good about it. They come and watched. They supported us.
How did the other team feel about having an umpire with related ties?
Well, the captain of the Thurlow is one of our friends. We do know him, so he was fine with it, and there was no controversial decisions at all.
I think it's a fantastic strategy.
No, yeah.
You could plant somebody.
That's the way
in a position of authority. It's a great idea.
Oh, look, here's the scorecard we can see on the screen with all of your names on there. Some fantastic English names on there. How does it get between the family members? Is it very, very competitive between you all?
As you get older, you work on that, don't you? And you keep that competitiveness out of it. And it's really to play with your sons. It's a great thing to do.
Yeah, it's a lovely
We've
thing
all
to
got
do.
sons in it. That's why we do it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday 5. Emails and messages have been flying in. John says, Benjamin's comments are insulting to decent people of this country. I am not a right-wing thug. I am a 65-year-old who has a lot of concerns about the way this country is going, along with millions of others. And he seems so happy that old-age pensioners will lose their winter payments. Now, Renee also has a message from Mama Renee.
So Mama Hunderkamp has texted in to say that Benjamin is making older people feel worthless. He's unpleasant.
I agree, Mama Hunderkamp. He is unpleasant. Now, it's time for our next debate. Ben is going to finish us off this hour.
She's a smart cookie, your mum, Renee. So, look, I've just got back from Aberdeen. I interviewed Donald Trump's son, Eric, and he was buoyant about his father's chances of winning re-election to the White House this November. So, of course, Donald Trump saw off sleepy Joe Biden in the last debate. He was so bad that he had to drop out. Kamala Harris is his replacement. And I find it quite interesting how the media, the mainstream media and a lot of the left, the Democrats, have totally reinvented Kamala Harris into some sort of centrist goddess, when the actual truth is that she's a militant leftist from San Francisco who, for example, oversaw the jailing of 1,500 people for very minor marijuana offences, was accused of delaying vital evidence in a man's case on death row, left him languishing there because she didn't want him to proceed with his appeal, and also additionally jailing many men for minor offences across San Francisco when she had the option to give them much lower lenient sentences. So she's an absolute militant leftist, and I find it very bizarre and hilarious at times how she's now been reinvented by the Democrats and the media into this person who can now take on Donald Trump in the White House. I just spoke to Eric Trump. He is absolutely certain his father is still going to win despite this Kamala bounce. And I'm sure when they debate on September the 4th, it was just been announced last night, Donald Trump accepted her invitation for a clash. He will absolutely wipe the floor with her, as he did Joe Biden some weeks ago.
It's interesting, isn't it, how she went in polling in the States from being really unpopular to this, like, weird sort of Kamala fever.
Do you know what it is? It's a complete lie. And Kamala Harris, the Democrats, for the best part of 2 years, have been lying to 350 million Americans and themselves by saying Joe Biden's fine, there's nothing wrong with him. He has been declining during that time. They knew about it, of course they did, and they've lied to people. They've lied all the way along. And it's only now they've had to admit, because he got so bad, that he was in a bit of a...
That's the reason why she managed to raise record numbers of funds in such a short amount of time, just because all of the Democrats were just like, Sleepy Joe's gone.
Of course, I'm going to be honest, they're all a bunch of liars. They're deceptive. They've lied to the American people. And how selfish have you got to be as well, by the way, to have a president still sitting in office when you know he's not even competent to tell you what day of the week it is? It's absurd.
Benjamin, you probably hate Trump, don't you? As much as pensioners? Maybe a bit less?
I don't hate pensioners. I was raised by pensioners. I was raised by my grandparents, but we weren't...
Terribly ungrateful.
What I would say, I think it's really interesting.
I hope you gave their house away.
When...
Who's going to inherit it? Sorry, go on, Benjamin.
When Joe Biden said he wasn't going to re-stand and put Kamala Harris was basically obviously going to be the candidate straight away once he said she was heir apparent, I thought, oh, God, that's a nightmare, because she's not been a popular VP. She's not seemed very effective. I don't think she can win. But she's really rising to the task. And I think that's why She's not
even spoken to the media. Donald Trump, when he was president, every day when he was there, would go to the White House lawn and speak to a barrage of reporters throwing insults and, biased questions at him. Kamala Harris hasn't once spoken off the cuff to any of the media. She's not risen to anything. The mainstream media have turned her into this, absolute untouchable goddess. She's not risen to any task at all.
Donald Trump sounds like a sort of a drunk man wandering past a bus stop. He makes no sense and just says anything that comes into his head.
Well, I think it's going to be really interesting when they do have a debate, actually, because don't forget Kamala when she...
Which he tried to avoid. He spent the last last week or so declining to do the original debate.
But don't forget, this is the woman who, when she visited South Korea, stood up there and gave a speech and said it's really lovely to be in North Korea. So she could well be as bad as Sleepy Joe.
Which also, I might point out,
as an excuse.
Sarah Palin, the VP candidate for John McCain, confused South and North Korea. So there's a VP trend there. But can I just say, the point I wanted to make, the objective point, is that the Trump strategy was to say that Sleepy Joe is too old, you can't have a sort of delirious elderly man in the White House, which I don't disagree with. It would be irrational to disagree with that. But I think he might inadvertently be the victim of his own strategy now.
How?
Because you turn it around and say, well, hang on, yeah, you were right. I don't want an old man that witters on and doesn't make sense. And now that person is Donald Trump.
The problem with Biden was the fact that he was senile. Trump is still sharp as anything.
Trump reads non-stop from a non-script, from no autocue whatsoever. Joe Biden...
But he makes no sense.
Joe Biden...
He thinks Hannibal Lecter is a real person.
Joe Biden couldn't even read his name from an autocue without stuttering. Trump is playing golf almost daily. He's fit as a fiddle, both physically and mentally.
Yes.
Renee's
that intense physical activity. Yeah, exactly.
You did this interview actually at the golf course, didn't you? So maybe you can hook Benjamin up to play Trump at golf.
I'm not sure he'd be welcome at Trump International.
What do you think, Claire?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be a really interesting presidential race because it looked like it was going to be very staid when we still had Joe Biden. Now we've got Kamala Harris to kind of mix it up a little bit. But I do think that Donald Trump had a real hard time at the Black journalism event recently. And he put his foot in it, no end. He made some comments that were really distasteful. Did you not ask him about those at any point?
I did actually, yeah.
I think,
and it was a normal. I mean, it was a normal question. Kamala Harris has been posting in years gone by on Twitter pictures of her growing up with her Indian mother. She's in Indian dress, and she's referred to herself previously as Indian, American Indian. So you know, suddenly Donald Trump has a point.
I'm not sure he does, actually, because I think it would be... If I was given a speech in Holland, I think I'd play on the fact that I have Dutch heritage, and I think that's what she's been doing. I think Trump was silly. I don't think he needed to do it, and it was clumsy, and I don't think it's going to play well for him. But I think the debate will be key.
I actually don't think it was an accident at all, because one of the big parts of Trump's strategy is that he thinks he can win over a much bigger chunk of black voters. And so what is one way to try and stain Kamala Harris? It's to say, oh, she's not really black, she's not really like you, she doesn't understand your culture because she's mainly Indian. And I think this was intentional. He is trying to drop that line to see if it lands. Because for some time, he's been trying to win over black men.
Except those voters, those African-American Trump voters, are very anti-identity politics and probably would actually take his side on that because they wouldn't like the fact that she's playing the identity politics game.
But I think it actually turns people off of politics as a whole, and I think probably a lot of black communities are going to go, do you know what, we're not going to be used like this,
and
we're
also,
not going to have it.
Let's give Trump some credit here. All other presidents...
Do we have to?
Well, we have to. Republicans had been invited to this event year after year and had never attended. He went. He took very hostile questions. He was there.
She didn't even turn up.
Righto, that's that. Loads more to come on tonight's show, including the first peek at Ben Leo's brilliant interview with Eric Trump and what should be a lively Saturday scrap as Dr. Renee and Benjamin clash over whether the BBC should remove Hugh Edwards' voice from the Queen's funeral and King's coronation coverage. That's all coming up.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It turns increasingly unsettled over the next 24 hours or so, particularly across the northwest of the UK. And that's down to an area of low pressure just sat to the northwest, bringing outbreaks of rain, stronger winds. The rain turning increasingly heavy by Monday across western Scotland. The Met Office warning out there could be some local disruption. A fairly quiet end to Saturday and into the early hours of Sunday, though cloud does thicken across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland later, with some patchy outbreaks of rain here, but for most it will be dry. Temperatures are largely staying in double figures, but a bit more comfortable for sleeping compared to recent nights. So Sunday morning, cloudy picture across western Scotland first thing, outbreaks of rain here, but brighter towards the northeast, the Northern Isles as well, seeing plenty of morning sunshine. The cloud extends across parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, with outbreaks of rain. They're largely light in nature. Drier further south and east across the rest of England and Wales, just perhaps 1 or 2 light showers, some hazy sunshine in places too. And as we head through the day on Sunday, we'll see further areas of cloud and rain pushing northeastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, perhaps northern England too. Much of the rest of England and Wales largely staying dry, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around, perhaps 1 or 2 showers. Best of the sunshine across southern and southeastern areas, temperatures here reaching around 23 or 24. Cooler further north and west you go, 16 or 17. With breezy conditions across western Scotland. On Monday, we can see heavy rain across Northern Ireland, Scotland, some local disruption possible due to that heavy rain through the day, with the Met Office warning out until around 9 p.m. Drier further south and east, temperatures are reaching around 26 or 27, so feeling a little warmer, then cooler and more unsettled later in the week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
It was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new 2-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life, and he's there to do it. I mean, we mustn't forget that in, I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helps people who are selling the magazine.
Big Issue, no?
Yes, The Big Issue. And he's worked all day long with the same man twice now. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to be...
Where does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's, you know, and there will be a lot more, and he's been getting the money to do this, and I think it's he wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I am Emma Webb along with Ben Leo, Dr Renee Hoendekamp, Claire Pearsall and Benjamin Butterworth. Plenty more to come tonight, including the highlights from Ben Leo's fantastic interview with none other than Eric Trump. Plus, what should be a very, very lively Saturday scrap over whether the BBC should take the voice of Hugh Edwards off of their broadcasts of state occasions. It's 7 p.m. and this is Saturday 5. And in Bunch of Five, we will be discussing the boxing scandal which has beset the Olympics and asking if Philip Schofield is set to make a comeback on I'm a Celeb. Then we'll be answering your questions in Ask the Five, and do send them through to gbnews.com/your say. But first, it's your Saturday night news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Emma, thank you and good evening. The top stories. Protests have been taking place in several parts of the country today. Ministers met this afternoon to discuss the potential for further widespread disorder. And in that meeting with senior MPs, the Prime Minister said the right to freedom of expression and the violent disorder we've seen are two very different things. He also said there's no excuse for violence of any kind. Merseyside Police have said a number of officers have been injured during serious disorder in Liverpool city centre. 4 men have been arrested in Stoke-on-Trent after disorder in the Staffordshire city. In Hull, around 100 people gathered outside a migrant hotel being guarded by police where a window was smashed. At least 3 people were led away in handcuffs as demonstrators faced counter-protesters in Nottingham. Meanwhile, police in riot gear were deployed in Belfast amid tense exchanges between protesters and an anti-racism rally with a small number of fireworks being thrown. Northumberland police have accused protesters of unforgivable violence and disorder following rioting in Sunderland city centre last night. Videos posted on social media showed a former police office ablaze, while a mosque was also targeted. Vehicles were overturned and set on fire as rioters clashed with police officers throwing rocks and bottles. 5 police officers were injured, with 4 hospitalised and 10 people arrested for offences including violent disorder and burglary. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says police have the government's full backing to take the action they need against violent protesters.
Well, criminal violence and disorder has no place on Britain's streets. We've been clear to the police that they have our full backing in taking the strongest possible action against perpetrators, including we're making sure that there are more prosecutors, there are sufficient prison places, and also that the courts stand ready, because anyone who engages in this kind of disorder needs to be clear that they will pay the price.
In other news, to the United States, Donald Trump has agreed to debate Vice President Kamala Harris. He accepted an offer from Fox News for a televised face-off on the 4th of September. It wasn't known if the presumptive Democratic nominee would agree to take part, although she had previously indicated that she was ready. Trump says the debate will feature a full arena audience. Kamala Harris has responded in a statement today accusing the former president of running scared and suggesting he should stick to the debate he already committed to on the 10th of September. And Team GB have a 10th gold medal at the Paris Olympics. That's thanks to a dominant display from the men's 8 crew, that's rowing, while further medals have come in windsurfing, dressage and artistic gymnastics. Well, GB's Jake Jarman took bronze in the men's floor final to win the nation's first artistic gymnastics medal of these games. The 22-year-old was just 0.033 points behind the silver medalist and defending champion. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll have more news in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday Five. I'm Emma and I can promise you that you are in for a very lively second hour of the show. So let's crack on with tonight's big interview, and we're going to do things slightly differently this week because our own Ben Leo has been up to Scotland today to speak to Donald Trump's son Eric. They covered a wide range of topics and the full interview is coming up on Mark Dolan tonight from 9 p.m. But we are getting a sneaky preview. Eric told Ben that what it is like to be Donald Trump's son. So let's take a look at that.
I went into his room every single day as I went to school, and he always looked at me. He goes, Eric, no drinking, no drugs, no smoking. Okay, let me say that again. No drinking, no drugs, no smoking. You better do well in school, right? And that's how we always went off. But he still calls us, my boy, right? And he's like, I know he's a 40-year-old who runs a $7, $8, $10 billion company, but he's still my boy, right? He might be old, he might have gray in his mustache, but he's still my boy, and now he's an incredibly loving guy.
He's not terribly Trump-like, is he?
No, he speaks really well. He's a lot calmer than his father. I'm not saying Donald doesn't, but he's a lot calmer than his father. He's very articulate, though. And I asked him in that question then, I said, what kind of father is Donald Trump? Because Melania Trump released that really eloquent statement after the assassination attempt saying, look, the general public and the world sees Donald as this political beast, and he is in one aspect. He's a massive politician, and all they see is the man on the stage, the Republican leader, the would-be president. But behind the scenes, he, of course, is a father. Like many other people, he's a grandfather. He likes music. He enjoys playing sport. He's a human being.
And his granddaughter actually did that very heartfelt speech, didn't she, at the big Republican conference?
Yeah, that's
talking about how, he's just her grandfather.
Exactly. So I wanted to kind of draw out from Eric the man behind the Donald Trump persona. And he said to me, he said, he called me within an hour of the assassination attempt, and he gave a heartfelt response. He said, look, I'm OK. I'm going to be at the Republican convention in a few weeks. We're going to do this. We're going to do this together. And there's a great clip I think we're going to play on Mark Dolan's show where I asked Eric where he was when he found out his father had been shot. And he was actually, I won't reveal too much, but he was watching it live with his kids on his sofa at home. And it was quite a heart-wrenching moment hearing him describe that, the instant he found out his father had been shot.
Benjamin, of course, you'll be watching this very keenly to see the human side of the Trump family.
Do you know, I can't pretend otherwise. I'm obsessed with them. Absolutely fascinated, because they are remarkable people. They have exceptional accomplishments. They're a very unusual family. They're quite hard to relate to most of us. And, I'm always really interested to try and see the kind of human behind the construction that we consume, as citizens, as people that watch the media, right? What is it like to be in a goldfish bowl as part of the most famous or the most talked about family in the world at the moment?
Well, I was just going to say that, actually, that probably, Ben, what this does is it actually brings a new stream to Donald Trump, because actually we don't really know anything. We know Melania's there in the background, and we know they've got the little boy, but that's about all we know. We don't ever.
He's quite a tall boy now.
Yeah, he is. He's 16 actually, isn't he?
Eric is massive, by the way. I thought I was tall. I'm just under 6'2", but Eric towers over me.
Yeah, but we've never really seen the human side of him. So I think, listening to Ben, I was thinking, maybe we just get to see a little bit more, and it can only do him good, I think.
Yeah, they're quite a charismatic family, aren't they?
They are, and they're so sort of behind closed doors. So, as Renaud was saying, Melania's there, Barron, and then there are the others. So I think it's really interesting to actually get behind that and find out who these people are, what they do, what they're like. I'm like you. I'm actually fascinated.
Well, they are
to learn about.
In a way, they are a bit like the extended royal family, which is a good segue to the next clip, because we have a clip here of Eric Trump talking about the British royal family.
What I can tell you is my father had so much respect for the Queen, as did I. My mom knew so many of them for years. I think you probably know that. Had a great relationship with Diana and everyone else. And, that's a very sacred kind of institution. And you can happily have those two back. We'll happily send them back from America. You can have them back over here, but I'm not sure if you guys want them any more than we might not want them anymore. They feel like they're on a little bit of an island of their own. But listen, you can always have bad actors in anything. You can always have spoiled apples and in every orchard. But the institution of the royal family is beautiful, and it's something that's really actually admired by a lot of Americans, and I think that should be protected. And
I find the way that Americans relate to the royal family, the British royal family, so fascinating because it's not quite like they're just plain celebrities, but it's almost as if it's kind of like, it's a bit sort of perverted in a way. It's almost like they kind of want them back, don't you think?
Yeah,
but not Meghan Markle. They don't want that one.
Well, Eric said there, he said you can have them back. We don't want them. I asked about whether Donald Trump, if and when he makes it back to the White House, whether Donald Trump would push for the public release of Harry's visa. Of course, there's that big controversy about whether Harry lied about previous drug use on his visa. Well,
that's something the Heritage Foundation, aren't they? They're pushing to try and get information about that because he might not legitimately be in America.
Exactly.
And
might be an illegal
Did you get a
immigrant.
sense that maybe the Trumps might deport Harry and Meghan?
Well, I asked him outright. You'll see later on. I said, if it is the case that Harry has lied on his visa application, will your father deport Donald Trump? You'll see the answer a bit later on.
Deport Prince Harry, not Donald Trump.
Sorry, yeah. in Benjamin's dreams. Yeah, I asked him that, so you'll find out later. But I think we take the royal family for granted in this country. Yes. And I said to Eric, there's a bit of an agenda here. You've got the Republic movement who want to turn us into, get rid of the monarchy, basically. And he said, he basically blamed Harry and Meghan for pushing that, which was quite interesting.
It's interesting.
You know, it always amazes me the soft power that the royal family gives us. I remember a few years ago, I was in Kyrgyzstan, and this guy, this driver I had didn't speak a word of English. And so he just tried to name famous people. And so he named Princess Catherine and Prince William, right? Those were the people that he could name. The whole world knows and is familiar with our royal family. I think if Trump were to say that Prince Harry can't legitimately be in the country because he lied, that would be a diplomatic crisis. Yeah. You know, that would be not a good thing between our two countries, whatever you think about them as individuals.
I was going to say that special relationship would get a little bit more special, wouldn't it?
I mean, the only thing that would cause friction would be that we'd have to take him back.
Who knows? Maybe Meghan Markle could be the VP candidate. She could be on the ticket. I think she'd like that.
Interesting, wouldn't it, if Harry being deported back to the UK were the thing to split them up?
Do you know what? I wouldn't rule it out because the Trumps are... I asked, again, you'll see the full clip later, but I asked Eric Trump about the comments from David Lammy, who is now the Foreign Secretary. Of course, Lammy, in previous years, called him a Nazi sympathising sociopath who mixes with the Ku Klux Klan and all sorts of other nonsense. And I said, your dad doesn't forget stuff like that, does he? Because he's a very loyal guy. Just like his friendship with Nigel Farage, he remembers that Nigel stuck his head above the parapet in 2015, 2016, and tried to support Donald Trump in his race for the White House. And Trump doesn't forget that kind of stuff. So I think when it comes to Harry and Meghan, where he sees, especially in Harry, a treacherous little toad, if I may say so, he doesn't forget that kind of thing.
Was there any talk of Farage in your interview?
Yes.
Because obviously there is a special relationship between Trump and Farage, and if he were to become president, it would be quite unique for a smaller party to have a more special relationship, perhaps, with the president of the United States than the government.
Eric said that he would be very open to the idea of some sort of role for Nigel. I don't know if, as an MP, whether he's even allowed to do that, but he definitely said himself, his father, the family, they love Nigel, they love his loyalty and his friendship, and they were certainly open to having some sort of role, whether formal or informal, if Trump wins.
As a bit more of a teaser, Ben, what for you was the highlight of this conversation? What for you was the sort of thing that stood out as the most interesting little bit, or is that something that must be saved for later? People have to stay tuned in.
There was a few moments. There was I asked where were you when you found out your father was shot, and he gave quite a colourful anecdote of the moment he discovered when his father was shot. But also I relayed those comments from David Lammy and also a dozen members of Starmer's current cabinet who have said awful things about Donald Trump in recent years. I read them out to him. I said, what do you think of that? What does your father think of that? Will he remember it? So, yeah, you'll find out his answer.
Did you read Benjamin Butterworth?
Yeah, they're all going to be sat around in the Cabinet Office having a little look to see important diplomatic information that you've retained there, Benjamin.
But, I mean, this is the extraordinary thing. You know, you could have a situation with Nigel Farage being the go-to person for the US president with British diplomatic political matters.
Well, Farage...
You know, this could be quite unpredictable.
Farage did broker, as far as I understand, a meeting some months back between David Lammy, when he was Shadow Foreign Secretary at the time, and Trump's team. I understand he met JD Vance, amongst other people, possibly Don Jr. as well.
I'm such a big fan of JD Vance. OK, that's all we've got time for now. But that
Are you a childless cat lady?
That interview will be all full on Mark Dolan's show at 9 p.m. tonight. Now, imagine having £30,000 extra in your bank to play with this year. Well, it could be yours in the latest Great British giveaway. We're giving away our biggest cash prize so far this summer. Want to be the next big winner? Well, here's how you could be.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, still to come tonight, we'll tackle the Olympic boxing row and ask if we are likely to see Philip Schofield on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. But next, should the BBC remove Hugh Edwards' voice from the Queen's funeral and the King's coronation coverage? It's about to get feisty as Dr. Renee and Benjamin Butterworth go head-to-head in the Saturday scrap. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, time for the best part of the show, our Gracest Britain, where we share amazing people who do amazing things. And this week, that is Dr. Leo Cheng and Reverend Hilary Cheng.
Well, Dr. Chen regularly serves as a volunteer surgeon aboard the Mercy ships in West Africa and has recently served his 17th mission aboard the ships. He volunteers with his wife, Reverend Hilary Cheng, a Methodist minister in the UK.
Thank you for joining us, and what a privilege. So just briefly explain, what are Mercy ships?
Well, Mercy ship provide world-class surgery on the ship, and the ship then sail to these poorest of the poor country because there's no infrastructure to get road or rail there. And we offer free surgery and also education, training of medical staff, and partner with the local or the host nation to build up their surgical and anaesthetic services.
So how long have you been travelling West Africa? You go on all these different ships, different ports, and you treat the needy and the vulnerable. How long have you both been doing this?
20 years.
20 years?
Just over 20 years.
And you take the time to do this out of your own holiday from work. Why do you do it?
Well, because I'm indebted to the education in this country with all the qualification I get. And NHS is great. I love the NHS because without NHS, we see cases that we see in the low-income country. And I want to make use of my hand to help those people who have no way of helping themselves. Because the tumours, the deformities, not just a physical ailment, but it's being ostracised and die early, commit suicide because they've been ostracised by their family.
When you're on the ship, you are seeing the very worst that the country can offer. I find it a great privilege to work alongside these people.
GB News, the People's Channel. Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Saturday 5, as always. Thanks to you for all of your emails on tonight's topics. Meanie says, I am up for a debate with Benjamin at a table in the pub. We would end up besties, though he would find himself slightly enlightened to the real world. What do you think of that, Benjamin?
Well, she's got 300 quid from the States, so she can afford a few drinks, I'm sure.
Such an unpleasant person, Benjamin. Anyway, Lyle says, Ben interviewed Eric Trump today in Scotland and then made it back down for the show. Yes, he really did. Let's make him the new transport minister. Well, I think he's definitely got some insight into what's wrong, that's for sure. Now, it's time for this. Now it's time for tonight's main event. The BBC may remove Hugh Edwards' voice from the Queen's funeral and the King's coronation coverage. This comes after the former newsreader pleaded guilty to possessing indecent images of children. Some people say this is the right thing to do, as Hugh has disgraced himself. However, some believe that this is going too far, as he was part of these historic events, and that would be to rewrite history. Now, let's see what Dr. Renee and Benjamin think of this one. Ladies first. Wait, there off you go, Renee.
OK, so I heard this and I was thinking about it today, that the BBC were thinking that they could, using all of the technology that they have now, remove Hugh Edwards' voice from the coverage of the Queen's funeral. And I thought about that and I thought how ridiculous it was as an idea. Now, I'm the first one to defend children and say that we don't value them enough and we don't punish people enough when they do bad things to children. But this isn't about that. This is about something that's already happened. It's in the past. His voice is there. We didn't know about his crimes then. And I think the moment we start tampering with history and erasing people's voices from AI and maybe putting someone else's voice over, when do we stop that? Where's the line? When do we go to books and start taking out words and pages? I mean, some could argue we've already started doing that with some of them, Roald Dahl books, for example. But in the main, I'm not a fan of changing history. We can explain it, but I think to start removing it and to start taking away people's voices is actually so Orwellian that it's dangerous and it's scary.
I think it's a complicated one, for sure. But look, Hugh Edwards has turned out to not be the man we thought he was. He's a monster, he's a liar, he's a money grabber. And that has become painfully true in the last week or so as revelations have emerged. And what I have a problem with is that, you know, if he were to be removed from random programmes he'd done from the BBC, would it matter much? Maybe not. But what we're talking about here, and what's been reported on in the Daily Telegraph, is that his narration of the Queen's funeral and of those days of national mourning for this country, that his voice be removed from that. Now, this is a matter of history and shared, experience for all of us. And I think the idea that the Queen's final moments have the voice of a man that we now know to be as disgraceful as Hugh Edwards over the top of them is an insult to our late Queen. It's an insult to the people that cared for her. And it's an insult to all the decent people at the BBC that worked exceptionally hard to cover that funeral to the country that, 30 million of us watched. And so I think they're right to remove his voice, because her legacy shouldn't be tarred with his actions and his voice on top of it.
Yeah, I get that, Benjamin, I really do. And I completely understand. The man is absolutely deplorable. Anybody that can commit the crimes that he has, absolutely deplorable. But this is history. It happened. Taking his voice away doesn't mean it didn't happen. That's really important. And for me, it's just this slow walk to total authoritarianism where we can change anything and pretend that it didn't happen.
I'd think back to Jimmy Savile, who is the most obscene paedophile this country's ever seen and, of course, was the BBC's biggest star. And after he was exposed against the BBC's wishes, there was a statue of him in Leeds that was pulled down. There were all sorts of celebrations of him that were disappeared. Now, I don't think anybody that had a note of Jimmy Savile, whether it was a plaque on the wall or a statue in Leeds, would want to be walking past those. They'd say they should be removed. And I think that is the attitude we should go by.
100%. And a statue is a statue. You take it down, nobody knows it was there. This is something that actually happened in time. time, the Queen's funeral happened and Hugh's voice was over the top of it. You start changing that and you've actually altered history. You're not just removing a statue, you're altering history.
Let's broaden it out. Claire, what do you think? It surely isn't right to just like a good, sensible idea to disappear people from the historical record, no matter how bad they are, because that distorts the historical record.
Well, that's right, and I think it would be one of those really weird situations if you either had nothing there, so you just had footage of the funeral with no voice over it, or if you put someone else's voice dubbed over it. I mean...
But it would be a lie.
It would be a lie, and those of us who are old enough remember when Jerry Adams was dubbed on television because we weren't allowed to hear his voice. And you look at it as the most ridiculous thing in this day and age to do, and it feels a little bit like that. Would it be dubbed? Would it be a different voice? This is history. It has happened. Doesn't take away from the fact that what he's done is awful.
Yeah, there's a kind of sort of like a mystical aspect to it, isn't it? We can't hear his voice. Yeah. But it is how it happened. It is how that was reported. And so surely it is wrong to just remove his voice, no matter how bad he is.
I think it's all a bit silly. It's a bit of a red herring. The biggest...
They just want to make some kind of statement out of it, do you think?
Yeah, the biggest issue here is the fact that the BBC is going to be forced to pay £300,000 a year for Hugh Edwards' pension, his gold-plated pension, even if he serves up to 10 years in prison for his crimes. And the reason being is because the BBC apparently don't have morality clauses in their contracts. I don't know if anyone has watched The Morning Show on Apple TV, anyone at home. It's one of my favourite series, but it's about a news anchor who gets up to some sexual mischief, some impropriety, and he gets sacked. He loses everything. He loses millions, he loses his home, because in his contract is a morality clause. It turns out, and Tim Davie alluded to this week, that the BBC don't have morality clauses in their contracts.
That's going to be quite unusual.
At least not Hugh Edwards' contract. So regardless of what he's done and how long he spends in prison, Hugh Edwards is going to be pocketing £300,000 a year of licence fee money for the rest of his life.
Yeah, Benjamin, are they not deflecting from the reality, like the fact that the real issue here is that licence fees, which is, the licence fee is effectively a tax, licence fee payers have been funding the salary and will continue to fund the pension of a convicted paedophile?
I think they probably are doing that, yes. And I think that this is them trying to look like they're doing the right thing after they've done the wrong thing for a very long time. You know, we know from the Sun's excellent reporting in the last year that the parents of one person who's not involved in what he pleaded guilty to, but they'd made complaints to the BBC repeatedly and they'd been ignored. So they weren't doing the right thing when no newspapers were looking. What I'd say is that actually I think this plays into these questions we have about cancel culture and people being accused and decided they're guilty even if they're not, right? So the BBC knew that he'd been arrested on serious charges in November and kept paying him. They paid him £200,000. Now, the natural reaction is that's unacceptable because now we know he's admitted to doing it and will be given a sentence or something like that in a few months. But actually, being arrested is not an acknowledgement of guilt. You are innocent until found guilty.
But his pension is something like £300,000
And so,
but
I just point out that, you know, if you'd been arrested for something terrible that you hadn't done and you then lost your income for 6 months, that could ruin you for years. That wouldn't be fair. And I think that, you know, to say that the BBC should have cut him off then, well, you might think that because it turns out he's a total wrong-un, but actually that's a rule that would get very messy if we all lived like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they were in a very difficult situation in the actual period between him, first of all, being arrested and charged. 100%, I don't think they could have done anything else. But as you rightly say, the time for them to act was when the parents went, and they had form. You know, people came forward about Jimmy Savile and they were dismissed. When these parents came forward, they should have learned from their previous mistakes and said, something here needs investigation.
Not just Hugh Edwards, of course, because there's a whole long string of examples of wrong-uns that they didn't sort of
take serious,
pick up on, or, you know, there's obviously some kind of, they're paying huge salaries to people in diversity roles, and they have obviously have not got their safeguarding sorted out.
And that's the problem. And if you listen to Tim Davie's comments and the sort of almost speech lecture that he gave as an interview, it sort of said, well, we didn't really know so it can't really be our fault. And it's that attitude I find shocking from an organisation, as you say, that has many, many diversity czars hidden within it, and we all pay it through a tax, which is the licence fee, that they didn't know, they didn't understand, they couldn't see what was going on.
Yeah, they won't know if they don't investigate it, will they?
I mean,
Which was clearly the attitude they were taking, you know, don't, you know, what is it, don't say, don't hear, what's that phrase?
Hear no evil, see no evil.
Exactly. And, you know, I think that's the problem here. And actually, I would also lay this, that, you know, Jeremy Vine, the Radio 2 presenter, he the other day said that he'd always found Hugh Edwards a deeply unpleasant man, that he wasn't very nice. And so it suggests that the culture at the BBC was accepting someone highly dubious for quite a long time.
And let's just remember, whilst the BBC chases cancer patients for unpaid licence fees, paedophile Hugh Edwards is on £300k a year. There's where you're
Well, that's a very good note to end on. Still ahead, we will take your questions in Ask the Five. Nothing is off limits, so get them in. But next, the Olympic boxing row that has got everyone talking. And is Philip Schofield really being lined up for a comeback? If I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. It's almost time for Bunch of Five. You're with the Saturday Five live on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It turns increasingly unsettled over the next 24 hours or so, particularly across the northwest of the UK. And that's down to an area of low pressure just sat to the northwest, bringing outbreaks of rain, stronger winds. The rain turning increasingly heavy by Monday across western Scotland. The Met Office warning out there could be some local disruption. A fairly quiet end to Saturday and into the early hours of Sunday, though cloud does thicken across parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland later, with some patchy outbreaks of rain here, but for most it will be dry. Temperatures are largely staying in double figures, but a bit more comfortable for sleeping compared to recent nights. So Sunday morning, cloudy picture across western Scotland first thing, outbreaks of rain here, but brighter towards the northeast, the Northern Isles as well, seeing plenty of morning sunshine. The cloud extends across parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of northern England too, with outbreaks of rain. They're largely light in nature. Drier further south and east across the rest of England and Wales, just perhaps one or two light showers, some hazy sunshine in places too. And as we head through the day on Sunday, we'll see further areas of cloud and rain pushing northeastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, perhaps northern England too. Much of the rest of England and Wales largely staying dry, but there will be quite a lot of cloud around, perhaps one or two showers. Best of the sunshine across southern and southeastern areas, temperatures here reaching around 23 or 24. Cooler further north and west you go, 16 or 17. With breezy conditions across western Scotland. On Monday, we can see heavy rain across Northern Ireland, Scotland, some local disruption possible due to that heavy rain through the day, with the Met Office warning out until around 9 p.m. Drier further south and east, temperatures are reaching around 26 or 27, so feeling a little warmer, then cooler and more unsettled later in the week.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday 5. As always, thank you so much for all of your emails and messages on tonight's topics. Adrian says, no, you can't remove Hugh Edwards' voice from the Queen's funeral. Just don't show him anymore on TV, like we don't get Savile or Glitter. Aaron also said, I bet Benji... I'm guessing they're referring to you, Benjamin Butterworth. I bet Benji...
My dad calls me Benji, so...
I bet Benji doesn't want any pensioners to win the £30,000 giveaway, even though most pensioners don't even own their own home, too right. Now, it's time for this. Right, still ahead. We have all of your questions first we're going to Ben Leo, who's going to lead us off here. Ben,
right.
to you.
So, doing the rounds in the papers today is this. I find it very funny indeed. Apparently, Philip Schofield, remember him of ITV fame? He is, quote-unquote, the front runner to appear in this autumn's ITV I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here in Australia. Of course, it was Nigel Farage last year. This year, apparently, Philip Schofield is in the running. He's been pictured out and about with Ant and Dec having dinner in recent weeks, and apparently this is going to be his big chance to revive his TV career after leaving ITV in rather shameful circumstances. So, panel, Philip Schofield.
So weird, isn't it?
Eating those critters down under.
Going on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here is literally the worst thing someone can do to launder their reputation. It can only show you up to be a bad person.
I think Nigel did OK.
Nigel is a genuinely nice, decent bloke, and that's the reason why he came out looking good. But most people are not as nice and decent as Nigel, so they don't.
What I find astounding about this is if it's true and he is about to be rehabilitated, if he had been involved with a young woman who he had enticed and groomed, if that's the word you want to use, he would never see the light of day again, you'd like to think. But he would. Mm-hmm. But because it's a young man... Sorry, he would never see the light of day. But because it's a young man, there's an acceptability about it somehow, that it's OK. And if you say anything about it, it's homophobia. Well, it isn't. It's a young, vulnerable person, whether it's a boy or a girl. And that's what I hate about this.
Yeah, see, I don't think this is in any way true. I think this is something that has been dreamt up. People are putting it out there to, I don't know, get everybody ready for the comeback of Philip Schofield at some point.
Do you think it's his own PR team?
I do. I think it's him behind it. Let's put this out there, see how that one lands. I mean, it's the sort of flag flying that happens in politics with different policy ideas. And that's what it strikes me as. I don't think there's necessarily any truth in it, but nobody's going to really dampen it down because, of course, everybody's going to talk about it. And here we are this evening talking about it.
And look, you know, he was an ITV star. I'm a Celeb is an ITV show. Now, there's a parliamentary inquiry yet to start looking into this behaviour and cover-ups of things like sexual assault in media organisations. The focus of that is ITV. Are they really going to want him on their flagship show, their most watched programme on the channel, when a select committee in Parliament is calling in their bosses to see what they did when there were questions over his conduct at this morning? I don't reckon it will happen. I wonder whether he's putting this out to, as you say, get ready for him having a job again.
I'd love to see it, though.
Seems a bit unlikely, doesn't it?
I'd love to see it. Send me back down under to the Gold Coast to be a Scof correspondent. I'm there for it.
Right, Renee, over to you.
OK, so this week, I think, in my opinion, the Olympics have introduced a new layer of misogyny. They've never been very keen on women. Don't forget that women were not allowed to do the ski jump until 2014 because they might damage their wombs. And that's true. That's actually true. And they've actually been steadfastly refusing to do gender tests. So until 2000, there was a very simple cheek swab gender test, and they surveyed 1,000 elite women. 84% of them said they had no problem with it. 94% said they didn't find it intrusive at all. But no, they're not prepared to do it. There is suggestion this week that 2 boxers actually have XY chromosomes. They failed a female chromosome test. We don't know for sure because this is what's being reported. And they have allowed those 2 boxers who are banned by the International Boxing Association into the ring with women. It's like a new sport, if it's true, of men beating up women. Now, I don't know what you feel. I think that boxing is divided by weight and sex, because it's a dangerous sport. And if it's true that these 2 men are XY, these 2 women are XY, that actually makes them male in every cell of their body. What are we waiting for? Are we waiting for a brain injury? Are we waiting for a woman to die? It's baffling.
Yeah, it could be fatal. I think it's crazy.
But the IOC would argue that this person was raised as a woman. They have low testosterone, which qualifies them.
They haven't argued that. They've said no testosterone tests have been done.
Well, they're saying that, according to the passport, this person's been raised as a woman all their life and they have an F in their passport,
Yeah.
which, according to the IOC, it qualifies as a woman.
Well, that's equivalent to self-ID, isn't it? And herein is the problem with self-ID. Look, it's a very sad situation, because if they do have XY DSD, then they looked like they were female at birth. They most likely have been raised as a woman. But what happens is they have internal testes that secrete testosterone, and if it's working, which it looks like it probably is with these people, they actually then have the power and puberty of men.
The question is, if it is the case, this isn't a trans issue. This is if this person was born with this certain condition. So if that's the case, where do people like this compete in sports?
Well, presumably in a category of their own. Benjamin, you're woke and have terrible views. What do you think of this?
But, I mean, it's not a transgender issue. It shows the complications of it. I do think that, you know, when you get men that are built in a way different to 99% of other men, you know, with exceptional natural abilities in sport that no other man can compare to, we say, oh, isn't that brilliant? And I think sometimes, you know, women with these unusual biologies, are we then saying, oh, well, you must be a man?
Variation.
No,
because this
is not natural variation.
Well, it is natural, and it is a variation.
Caster Semenya has this and has fathered children. She actually now looks just like a man. She sits next to her wife looking like a man because she has testosterone at male levels, because she has internal testes. That's not a woman who's extra strong and extra different. That's a woman who has testosterone because actually her chromosomes say she's a man.
I think the difficulty is, though, that, you know, this person on every scientific and official record is a woman.
No.
Well, they are.
No.
Well, they are. They've never been categorised as anything other than
the
a woman.
boxing authorities tested this person's chromosomes and it's XY.
Yeah, but what I mean is they have a woman's birth certificate, a woman's passport, live life as a woman.
Paper trumps.
We've got to move on. We've got to move on. Right, it's my turn.
Sorry, Claire.
Chair's prerogative. So many of you will remember Abdul Azidi, who converted to Christianity and then went on to commit that gross attack in Clapham. Well, now the Reverend Matthew Firth, who came out at the time and exposed what he described as a conveyor belt of conversions to Christianity by people who wanted to stay in the UK, has said that he might go up for being, as a chancellor, go up as a candidate for being Chancellor of Oxford University. To be standing against Lord Hague and would be the sort of anti-woke candidate.
Well, they call it pray to stay, don't they? And I worked on the Liverpool bomber the hospital bomber in Liverpool, and I went and spoke to one of the reverends there who, en masse, he converts migrants from Islam to Christianity just so they can stay. So it's a massive racket, and it's a massive concern. And I don't know why people like this guy, what's his role? Why they're being elevated to such massive roles when, I mean, for example, in Liverpool at least, he shouldn't have been there, that person. I can't remember his name, but the guy
doesn't he want to challenge?
This guy, he exposed the fact that there was this conveyor belt.
Oh, he exposed it?
He exposed it. He came out and said at the time that he's obviously Church of England. I think this guy converted through another church, but he came out at the time and said that this is a conveyor belt. There are all these people who are coming in and converting to Christianity, and the Anglican Church is aware of it.
So he was the whistleblower?
So he was the whistleblower, and now he's come out and said that he's going to effectively, I don't really know how the system works, but effectively run to become, as a candidate, to become the Chancellor of Oxford University in order to try and stop that wokery.
Got it.
Which I don't think is a bad thing to aspire to. I'm not a fan of many woke issues, but also on the flip side of this, because I don't want to anger poor Benji over here, is he going to be the best person for the job? Because he's going to be up against some incredibly good people. You've mentioned Lord Hague, who I happen to think is a very good person for a role such as that. So whilst I admire whistleblowing, and I think that we should celebrate that, and removal of some of the ridiculous wokeness that we have recently, you still want the best person for the job to be in charge of a university as Vice-Chancellor.
But he does have the experience of running a church and all this. I know it's not quite the same thing, but maybe it might be a good thing to have somebody who isn't your typical candidate, somebody who's actually got courage to stand up against some of this stuff, so that Oxford...
Yeah, but is any of it relevant to the job he's applying for? I'm not sure if it is. I dare say, I'm not, you know, I didn't go to Oxford, I'm not familiar with the intricacies of how you get selected for this, but I suspect that William Hague would be a far more appropriate candidate.
Right, Claire's turn.
Well, The thing about the Olympics is that you end up watching a bunch of sport that you would never, ever do. And this week, I have watched the most amazing shooter. So this was in the air pistol category, Yusuf Dikec of Turkey, who got the silver medal. He came out looking like somebody that was just off for a walk. He'd gone maybe to the shops and he'd popped into the Olympic Stadium, put on his specs, hand in his pocket, pulled out an air pistol and got a silver medal. And I just think that, you know what, we need more people like that in our lives. He came in, he had that whole aura of, I'm just passing through, I'll just do this in my spare time. And then he wandered off, and he has, looking through his history, he has been in the forces over in Turkey, but he has also been in every single Olympic Games since 2008. But for me, he is the star of the 2024 Olympics in Paris.
I wish I was that cool.
I also think that you've raised a really interesting point. I think what the Olympic does, or should do, for our children is inspire them into sport. Yeah. My son wanted to play ice hockey when he watched the Winter Olympics, and he ended up playing for Haringey as a result. He then wanted to high dive when he saw the Summer Olympics, and he ended up high diving for the local Barnet club. And so I think it should actually inspire children, and we should be able to encourage them to look at it. We need to get rid of all the satanic porn opening ceremonies in order to do that without corrupting their minds before it starts.
Right, let's crack on with Benjamin.
Well, I was missing from the show last week, which I think explains its unusually high ratings. I was in Kosovo at something called the Sunny Hill Festival, which Dua Lipa, the British Kosovan singer, her family run that. And I've been to Kosovo a couple of times, but I was struck by several occasions where, there you go, you see Stormzy, the British singer, who was draped in the Kosovan flag while he was there. And I was really moved because quite a few times during my time at the Sunny Hill Festival, people came up to me when they learnt I was British, and they still wanted to say thank you for what we did as a country and with NATO in the 1990s. There was someone who turned out to be a radio newsreader who just came up to me, having heard me at my British accent, and said, you need to know that how grateful we are that we have our families in our country because of what you did. And it struck me because 2 weeks ago on this programme we were discussing Ukraine with a Trump supporter who said, I'm not sure we should spend all the money, and it's definitely a live debate. And for me, going to a place like Kosovo and hearing those people 20 years, 25 years after we intervened saying thank you, we have so much respect for the British for what you did, I think seeing what's going on in the world right now, it was really pertinent, and it made me really proud to be British.
It's a shame, isn't it, that we don't talk more often about the kind of positive things that Britain has even done in recent history.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do have our part to play in healing a situation overseas. And I think that that is one thing that we aren't very good at highlighting amongst our own population. And it's the same with certain amounts of foreign aid. There's always an argument over foreign aid that it goes to the wrong things, but it can be used for good. And I've seen some really good schemes in Central Africa for women and girls and education and female health. And that's really important. But unfortunately, it falls into that same category as that we don't talk about it enough. We don't realise the impact it has on our...
It does sort of bust the myth, doesn't it, that, you know, the only harm that not just Britain but the West does around the world is malign.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I mean, they really love Britain and America. They have a statue of Bill Clinton in the city centre. They have a shop called Hillary that only sells pantsuits inspired by Hillary Clinton. It's a real thing.
Did you get one?
I didn't. They didn't have one large enough for me. But... and then
Shame you just squeezed into it just for the show.
There are men in Kosovo and also in Sierra Leone, in fact, called Tony Blair, as in Tony Blair, but as a first name. And a couple of weeks ago, they unveiled a statue of Tony Blair, and a load of Tony Blairs were there to meet Tony Blair.
So it's quite extraordinary. Years to come, there's going to be Benji Butts.
I think that's a fabulous idea. I think it is. But, you know, whether we should intervene in countries is a big question in recent years. And it just struck me that, you know, there is a legacy there. There are people alive. There are families together. There is a safe, stable country because Britain made a decision. And I think we should remember that.
Righto. Well, I might go on holiday to Kosovo. But still ahead, we will answer all of your questions in Ask the Five. No topics are off limits, so I wonder what you have in store for us this week. You're watching the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Now, we've got a story and a half to tell you and bring you now. Our very own GB News political correspondent, who we love very much, Catherine Foster, joins us in the studio, and she's smiling, but she wasn't smiling for the past few days.
2 of her sons, Matthew and Andrew, were reported missing in Bali.
I got a text from a friend saying, can you give us a call, a bit worried about them. Then spoke to a girl they'd befriended who was in Sweden, but they'd met on their travels. And she told me that they'd gone up the mountain. By the time I found out, they'd been missing for 30 hours. They'd gone up the mountain on the Tuesday night, British time. This was the Thursday morning, without a guide. And they'd told her it was really hard. And she told them to turn back, but they hadn't. And they'd sent screenshots from this app with this trail that they were following on the app, screenshots of the app in case there was a problem, and a Snapchat of a Matthew avatar at the top. And she said, I know they made it to the top because I could see that his phone had nearly died. But the trail had actually closed many years ago. So the app, we will need to make sure that that gets taken off the app. But, you know, technology saved them in the end because it was the screenshots and it was the messages that they'd sent, but they should never have been without a guide.
But what were you doing during those 30 hours that Mum couldn't, when the phone died and Mum couldn't get in touch? Where were you? What were you up to?
Well, we were trying to figure out the best course of action, because it started to pour with rain. The amount of rain created a river, like a stream.
Yeah.
We were like, oh,
yeah,
let's follow the stream downhill, and then the sun set, and we just had to like sleep in the bushes in the jungle.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday 5, as always. Thanks for all of your emails and messages on tonight's topics. Speaking of which, it's time for this. So let's see what you've got for us this week. This is from Kathleen. She says, hi, everyone. All I see on my feeds at the moment is people wanting to be a trad wife. Surely the Saturday 5 girls have no truck with this. Well, actually, I'm sure. But let's see what Renee thinks before I get back to you.
I actually think it's not a bad idea.
Oh, you surprised me.
I think, having been to a lecture where I listened to Mary Harrington, you know where that was, I think that there's a big role to be had for women that stay at home, look after their children, look after their husband who goes out and works and makes the money. I don't think we should sneer at that, and I think it should be supported if that's what women want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I have quite a sort of nuanced view on this. I'm very supportive of people having traditional gender roles. I don't see any problem with that. I think there's a reason why these tried and tested traditions have lasted over so much time. But I do think that the kind of trad wiffery that is very, very sort of binary and ideological is not actually traditional. I would support a more traditional version of that proper relationship between a man and a woman.
No, and completely disagree with the pair of you on that. It's one of those, I get really quite cross when everybody said, oh, yeah, but it's a traditional roles. Well, look, let's rip that up. If women want to do it, fine. I'm not going to wade in on everybody's choices.
No one's saying you have to, Claire.
But when you watch and read a lot about the ballerina farm, which I think is probably where we're going with all of this,
I discovered that this week.
Feel as if she is that happy. It doesn't feel as if that's what she wants out of her life. And I think women are too important to just be pushed to one side and given a job like that to do when they don't want to.
Right, the men don't get to have an opinion on this, so only because of time. This is from Daniel. He says, "Hi, gang. My flatmate got us a new cat. Oh, I love cats. I said nothing thinking the landlord would refuse, but he's only gone and approved it. How do I get rid of the thing now? Give it to me. I'll take it."
Your flatmate needs to get rid of you. Cats actually used to be worshipped as gods, and that was the right thing.
Yeah, I love cats. Keep the cat. It's amazing. I had 2 young cats when I was, pretty much when I was born. They were twins. And the day they died, they were 19. One died a few months afterwards from a broken heart, I suspect. It's the saddest I've ever been in my life. So keep the cats. They're lovely creatures.
Right, very quick final question. We'll make sure that Benjamin gets a chance on this. Hi, Fab Five. It sometimes gets quite heated between you lot. Do you go for a friendly drink afterwards, or just Benjamin just go off in a huff? Well, maybe if I don't give him a chance to answer this.
Well, in preparation for this show, Claire Purcell said that she isn't sure about any of the Tory leaders being very likeable, and I said, yes, it's just like that on the Saturday 5, to prepare her for the first show. No, do you know what? We all get along, regardless, pretty much, of who's on the panel, and I think that's so important, because we live in a day and age where, especially if you open the internet, everyone just argues and hates each other because of a particular opinion.
We're going to have to finish there. Sorry. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, I can't stand you.
On her debut appearance. And next up, it's the brilliant Leo Kearse with Saturday Night Showdown. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It turns increasingly unsettled over the next 24 hours or so, particularly across the northwest of the UK. And that's down to an area of low pressure just sat to the northwest, bringing outbreaks of rain, stronger winds. The rain turning increasingly heavy by Monday across western Scotland. The Met Office warning out there could be some local disruption. A fairly quiet end to Saturday and into the early hours of Sunday, though cloud does thicken across parts of Northern Ireland,